Crouch.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Brett, Mr. Lennon, the engineer's report.
Larry will provide the update on Lawrence.
Okay, I'll start with the Lawrence project update. Under the collection system contract, so work completed last month includes the boring under Georgetown Road and Mayview Road, and working on construction of force main. We met with the contractor this morning, had our construction progress meeting. They completed the force main up into the village. They're moving at a pretty good pace, and they're getting ready to relocate back down to the industrial park and start working their way out. So we're going to notify the industrial park owners that they're going to be down there to give them notice that they'll be there about mid-December, and ask them to mark their utilities, because there was a water line that was hit last time they were down there. So he did submit the claim. Last month we talked about the Equitrans gas transmission main at Mayview Road. He did submit a claim on that on November 14th, attachment A, the blue sheets, $14,090.67. We did review it. It is reasonable. They were out there for 4 or 5 days coordinating with Equitrans. They kept having them relocate or locate the lines, expose it. They verified it. They had to wait for Equitrans to come out. They sat, waited, and then they ended up going deeper to go underneath of it in accordance with their requirements. So all that work was completed. The line's in. So I believe that's on the agenda. So we'd recommend approval of that by motion when that comes to that item. The Conservation District, that didn't come up today. The last they reported is they were working with the Conservation District. The first permit amendment was approved. They were requiring another amendment for some other changes that the contractor was working with the Conservation District on that. So that was the last we've heard from the.
That was just submitted.
Okay.
He just sent me the final submitted copy, I think Monday, yesterday. So there's been no response from them yet. So that's probably where we're at with that.
Okay. He did submit partial payment number 6 in the amount of $163,483.98. We do recommend a motion to approve that on the agenda. Under the plant contract, they did complete all the water tightness testing on the tanks that they built for the plant. So that's all complete. They're working on the control building. They started the masonry. They got the footers up to grade. They're working on a lot of electrical conduit stub out, so they're moving pretty good. They got the wet wells in. They did backfill that. It was a pretty big hole in the middle of the site. So the one thing that did come up today, and I forgot to tell Kevin too, they did notify us. They were anticipating from previous schedules from the equipment suppliers that everything would be on site in February. They just got hit on the one supplier for the motor control center. That was delayed till September of next year. They're trying to verify if that's real. That would postpone when we could have customers connect, but I think we've been telling the public fall next year anyways. Anyone that's been calling and asking, so talking to Mike. So they're to get back to us once they confirm what that delay is and if September is like worst case scenario or there's ways to improve that. So, but that came up this morning. He did submit partial payment number 5 in the amount of $914,608.50, and we did review that, and we did recommend a motion to approve that. And the last item on the contract, Penvest payment request number 6 in the amount of $1,124,923.63. That's for reimbursement of engineering and also the construction contract invoices. And there's a table attached to the report. It's a green sheet. We do recommend motion to approve that, to submit that to Penvest for reimbursement.
Okay,
Any questions?
then we'll get into motions. Did you have anything else?
The other two, I'll do the other two motions, just an update. 2 grant resolutions, one for Cherry Brook Lift Station for $556,022.73, and one for Miller's Run Treatment Plant Clarifier Improvements, $310,227.27. Another item just to note, we indicated last month that LSA, the committee was supposed to meet today. They did meet. They did not award any of the grants. They postponed that portion of the meeting until January, we're told. So, so it's not November now. It's going to be sometime in January. So.
Does that push back the If we were to win one of those grants, would that push back getting the money further than it was already?
Yeah, it was the H2O grants and the other LSA grants that were applied for last December. They were supposed to be awarded around September. It takes about 9 months for the award, but now it's going to be over a year. So,
Okay,
so I think, yeah, it moved it back about 4 months from what was anticipated. So,
okay,
but that's all I have.
okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the partial payment number 6 in the amount of $163,483.98?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve partial payment number 5 in the amount of $914,608.50?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the Penvest payment requisition number 6 in the amount of $1,121,424.67?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the change order request from Redsick Excavating, Inc. for the additional cost of Equitrans HB gas main conflict in the amount of $14,090.67?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, regarding Resolution 2023-09, do I hear a motion to apply for LSA grant in the amount of $556,022.73 for the Cherry Brook Lift Station Improvement Project?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, considering Resolution 2023-10, do I hear a motion to apply for LSA grant in the amount of $310,227.27 for the Millers Run Wastewater Treatment Plant Clarifier Improvement Project?
I have a question. Wonder why is it being postponed? Is it because of the election and
What was that again?
why is this grant, why are these LSA grants being postponed?
There's a 5-member board that makes a decision, and they have to be in agreement with how the awards are going to come out, all 5, or else they don't do any of the awards. So they get extended until the negotiation happens in Harrisburg.
Okay, but that's with the county, is that right?
It's not with the county. These are with statewide LSA grants. So this is in Harrisburg where these ones happen.
Okay, thank you.
Did we have a motion? I'm sorry. I mean, did somebody make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Any other comments or questions for the engineers tonight? Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Solicitor's Report. Mr. Nicholas?
Thank you. I have the item listed, the motion to execute the settlement agreement, which I'd ask the chair to defer till the end of the agenda for a brief executive session prior to the vote to explain to the board a little more detail with that expenditure. And also, I'd like to add, for the purpose of that executive session, some brief comments on the pending CHJ litigation. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Durg, the business manager's report, please.
Okay, your packets have the September 2023 financial reports. Any questions? And also, we received a rebate check from Highmark again this year. In your packets, there's a breakdown of what each employee will receive and a copy of the check in your packet to review.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
All right, Mr. Zrencheck, authority manager's report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a couple items. There's not much this month to report. I did get the quotes back finally for the Miller's Run pump station control panel upgrade. As everyone remembers, back in September, we had an issue with the VFD failing, and there is no backup to run that if it does not, if that goes down. We had two quotes. One from Clinton Controls, who did the original panel. Their quote was $7,887. And then we had a quote from DRV. Their quote was in the amount of $17,720. I'm going to take a closer look and see what the discrepancy is between the two. It looks like one just goes with conventional starters. The other one goes with a VFD and soft start bypass to do that. I'll take a look at this and talk with Larry and see which one, might be the better choice. But it's definitely something that we have to look into, because right now, if that station does go down with a VFD out, we have no way to run it. So this is just another redundancy in there. The other thing is, I almost have the applications together for the NPDES permit renewals. I'll be forwarding those over to LSSE for review, so we can get those out. And then I am waiting to get back. We discussed the debris mat at the wet well at Miller's Run Pump Station. I have a couple people coming out to take a look at that as well. So I hope to have some more information. If I get it before the next meeting, I'll forward it on to everyone. Under new business, I just wanted to let everyone know that the Budget Committee did meet last Friday just to discuss the preliminary 2024 budget. There was some talk that the rate increase from Cannonsburg, Houston, possibly being tabled, but right now, no word. But I'm in the process of finishing up the rate structure review and putting together the capital improvements recommended. So as soon as I get all that complete, I will forward that on to everyone for review. It does look like even with the rate increase, there will be a surplus to put back towards, some of the projects we have to do. But again, I want to make sure that all those numbers are clean. And the other thing I'm taking a look at is the commercial customers to make sure that that rate structure is good as well. So those are just a couple of the items I had for this month.
Okay, just to add on to the Budget Committee in meeting, we do want to finish this before the next meeting so that we can bring that to everybody, have it in your inbox, and propose the 2024 budget as well as take a look at that rate increase. So, that is anticipated. Okay, thank you. Review of correspondence. Do we have anything? Shanna, there's no correspondence? Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the payment of expenses and transfer of funds?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Januso?
Aye.
Mrs. Barney?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay, comments from the floor. Does anybody have any comments? Could you step up to the microphone, please? State your name and address.
My name is Michael Aaron. I live at 119 Valley Crest Drive in Cecil. And I'm here to complain because I believe this board is making the residents jump through hoops just to try and keep their property nice. I moved back to Cecil from New Jersey in 2004, at which time I built a modest home on Valley Crest Drive. not one of the million-dollar estates in South Point. In 2000, at that time, I had flat rate sewage, $20 a month, regardless of how much water I used. In 2006, I put a in-ground sprinkler system in my yard. It waters at most 1/4 acre. Early on, I was not concerned about how much water I used because the price of water was down and I didn't get billed for the sewage for it. Then the township took over the sewage. I was told I had to put in a deduct meter. It cost me almost $1,000 to do that, which took several years for me to recover. Now I'm told that I must put in a different deduct meter, one that can be read from the street while somebody rides by and have it mounted outside. That's going to cost me at least $1,500. Chances are I'll be dead and buried before I see that return in a rebate from what I pay for sewage. When the water rates were low, I had no problem watering like crazy. As they have skyrocketed, I've paid very close attention to what I do, how much I water. I think this year I probably only watered 12 to 15 times to keep the yard looking nice. On my street, there are many properties that look bad. They're 90% weeds. I keep my lawn looking nice. I have a man that comes and fertilizes, aerates, takes care of weeds. My lawn looks like a golf course. And all this board is doing is putting more and more hurdles in front of property owners who are just trying to keep their property looking good. Now, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want to put out $1,500. You tell me I need a different meter after you told me to get the first one. I think you ought to pay for it and have it put in, since I already made the investment. I may contact a investigative reporter from one of the television stations. I may file a Freedom of Information Act to get the names and addresses of every property owner who has an in-ground sprinkler system and see if I can get enough people together to take this board to court for this kind of abuse. Because now I understand that for years you came and read my meter for free. Now you're going to charge $25 a year just to drive by to read it. It just seems that you look to find more and more ways to inconvenience a property owner, a resident, a longtime resident, who's just trying to keep his property looking good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. We understand where you're coming from through your history of not paying for it up to a period of time, then purchasing the deduct meter, now a request for a different one. And I would say that there are many community members that have done the same thing over a period of time. And we try to keep everything equal and fair, including myself, who just recently purchased a deduct meter and had to do it and follow all of the rules and forms, et cetera, that are in place for Cecil Township. So believe me, I understand, what you're talking about here. However, for what we do know is for a long period of time, the budget was really not kept at a place where we knew that we were going to be able to fund all of the projects. And so the engineers took a serious look at that, and we had a 5-year plan to get to a point where we were able to maintain and sustain the infrastructure that we have for Cecil Township sewage. I can't really comment to the change in the new meter, so Mike, maybe you can?
If you can give me your phone number that I can call and look into this, because basically we do not do any type of The remote read we're talking about is somebody will not drive by. It's just a remote read that goes on the outside of the house that they can come up to and take a look at and, instead of coming into the house. We are not making anybody go to that type of remote reader due to the expense, but if you can give me your phone number, I can look into this a little bit more and see what's going on and see what's going on with your meter.
As I said, I feel like I already wasted, what I spent, I'm just a retired law enforcement officer. But I spent $1,000 already to put in one deduct meter. I barely break even with the rebate on the sewage from that. You tell me I gotta put in another one.
Is the one that you currently have, did it fail?
No, it
Then-
still works good.
Then who said that it had to be replaced?
I was told I had to get a different meter that could be read from the
That's,
outside.
that's why, let me get your information, let me take a look at this and take a look at what you have, and there may not be a need to replace the meter. I need to do a little bit more research.
Well, I would certainly appreciate that, because I feel like, if I have to buy another meter, get a plumber to do all the work, I'll be dead and buried before I ever recover that money.
If you give me your contact information, I can pull the file and I can take a look and see what's going on, and then I can even make a trip out to take a look at what you have, and we can come to a solution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we are now going to need a motion for executive session for personnel matters and litigation.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Burns,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mr. Januso,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Roach.
Aye.
And if I may, Mike, if the record could show that under litigation, it was for CHJA and for the condemnation. Okay?
Can do that.
We're going to take Dawn with us.
No, you know what, Kevin, Larry.
Okay, back from executive session at 7:33. And do I hear a motion? It is not on here.
I can read it if you'd like.
Oh, it was on your sheet. Go, yes, please do.
Yeah, it's a motion to authorize the settlement agreement with Montour 4 Place LLC and Mr. and Mrs. Nasser for the condemnation of the Lawrence Treatment Plant site and attendant easements, and proceed in accordance with same.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Rogers,
Aye.
Mr. Januso,
Aye.
Mrs. Barney,
Aye.
Mr. Roach.
Aye.
Okay, and I will make a motion for adjournment. Second?
Second. I'll make that motion. Aye, aye,
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Happy,
And
Happy
happy
Thanksgiving, Dawn.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too, Don.
Shanna, I'm supposed to take that agreement back and all that.